The lunchroom at Apex Innovations buzzed with chatter on a rainy Thursday afternoon in Seattle. Rows of sleek tables gleamed under fluorescent lights, filled with employees tapping on laptops or sipping kombucha from glass bottles. At the far end, Marcus Evans stood quietly, a tall black man, in a plain gray hoodie and scuffed sneakers, balancing a stack of pizza boxes in his arms. His dark eyes scanned the room, calm but watchful. "Yo, delivery guy," a sharp voice cut through the noise. Emily Carter, the office manager, stormed over, her blonde ponytail swinging with every step. She was in her late 30s, wiry, with a permanent frown etched into her pale face. She stopped a foot from Marcus, hands on her hips. "This pizza is cold. What kind of idiot can't keep food hot?" Marcus glanced at the boxes, steam still rising faintly from the edges. "I picked them up 10 minutes ago," he said, his voice steady, deep. "They're fine." Emily's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a sneer. "Fine? You call this fine?" Without warning, she snatched a slice from the top box, took one exaggerated bite, and spat it out. The half-chewed piece landed on Marcus's sneakers. She grabbed another slice and flung it at him, sauce smearing across his hoodie. "That's what I think of your fine," she snapped, crossing her arms. "Now clean it up and get me a new order. Move." The room went quiet for a split second. A few employees snickered behind their screens. Others pretended not to notice. Marcus stood there, sauce dripping down his chest, his face unreadable. He bent down, picked up the spat-out slice with a napkin, and dropped it into a nearby trash can. Emily smirked, satisfied, and turned back to her desk. But Marcus wasn't just some delivery guy. He was Apex Innovations' founder, a tech billionaire who'd built the startup from scratch. Today, he wasn't here to lead. He was here to watch. Rumors of racism and unfair treatment had reached him, whispers from ex-employees and online forums. He'd come to see it for himself, undercover, starting at the bottom. And what he'd just seen, that was only the beginning. He wiped the sauce off his hoodie with another napkin, his movements slow, deliberate. Emily thought she'd won, thought she'd put him in his place. She had no idea what was coming. Marcus straightened up, his lips twitching into a faint, knowing smile. This was about to get real interesting. The rain tapped against the windows of Apex Innovations, a gleaming tech startup nestled in Seattle's bustling downtown. The building was a modern marvel, 10 stories of glass and steel, crowned with a rooftop deck where employees sipped craft beer after hours. Inside, the open-plan office buzzed with energy. Rows of standing desks glowed with dual-monitor setups. Young coders in hoodies typed furiously, and glass-walled meeting rooms hosted pitches for the next big app. Apex was known for its cutting-edge software. Think AI-driven tools that companies like Amazon and Google envied, and its $200 million valuation. To the outside world, it was a beacon of innovation, but Marcus Evans knew better. That morning, he'd parked his beat-up Toyota hatchback 2 blocks away, swapped his usual suit for a faded gray hoodie and worn jeans, and slung a cheap backpack over one shoulder. At 38, Marcus was tall, broad-shouldered, with a close-cropped beard, framing a face that could command a boardroom or blend into a crowd. Today, he needed the latter. He stepped out into the drizzle, hood up, and walked toward the glass doors of the company he'd built from nothing. To the employees inside, he was just another face. To the world, he was a ghost. But in reality, Marcus Evans was Apex's founder, a black tech mogul who'd coded the company's first product in a cramped apartment a decade ago. He'd started Apex with a dream. A place where talent mattered more than connections, where ideas could thrive no matter who pitched them. Back then, it was just him, a laptop, and a stack of ramen noodles. Now, it was a powerhouse with 150 employees, a sleek headquarters, and investors knocking down his door. But success came with a cost. Marcus had stepped back 2 years ago, handing daily operations to a trusted COO, David Harper, a white guy he'd known since college. He'd focused on bigger ventures, angel investing, speaking gigs, while Apex grew under David's watch. Lately, though, the whispers had started. Anonymous posts on Glassdoor complained about a toxic culture. A friend at a rival firm mentioned hearing Apex favored white hires for promotions. Then came an email from a former coder, a black woman named Lisa, who'd quit after 6 months. "They treated me like I didn't belong," she wrote. "It's not the company you built anymore." Marcus read that email 3 times, his jaw tight. He'd poured his life into Apex. If it was rotting from the inside, he needed to know. Not from reports or meetings, from the ground up. So, he'd hatched a plan. Go undercover. Start at the bottom. See the truth with his own eyes. As he approached the entrance, the automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh. The lobby smelled of espresso and new carpet. A massive digital screen flashed Apex's logo, a stylized mountain peak above a reception desk where 2 women in blazers chatted. Marcus adjusted his backpack, keeping his head low. He could feel the shift in the air as he stepped inside. Eyes flicked toward him, quick and dismissive. A guy in a vest carrying a laptop brushed past without a glance. The receptionist paused their conversation, one of them, a brunette named Sarah, raising an eyebrow as she sized him up. "Can I help you?" Sarah asked. Her tone clipped, like she was already bored. Marcus nodded, keeping his voice casual. "Yeah, I'm here about a job. Heard you might be hiring." Sarah exchanged a look with the other receptionist, a redhead named Kelly, who smirked faintly. "A job?" Sarah repeated, her eyes drifting over his hoodie, the sauce stains still faint from Emily's tantrum earlier. "What kind of job?" "Anything," Marcus said, shrugging. "I'm just looking to get my foot in the door." Kelly leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. "Well, we don't usually take walk-ins," she said, her voice dripping with amusement. "But let me check." She tapped at her keyboard, the clack of keys loud in the quiet lobby. Sarah leaned over, whispering something that made Kelly chuckle. Marcus stood there, hands in his pockets, letting it play out. He'd expected this, hoped for it even. Every glance, every smirk, was a piece of the puzzle. After a moment, Kelly looked up, her grin widening. "Good news. We've got 1 spot open. Delivery team's short a guy. You cool with running food and packages all day?" Marcus tilted his head, as if weighing it. The delivery gig wasn't glamorous, hauling coffee, pizza, and mail between floors, but it was perfect. It'd get him inside, let him see every corner of Apex, hear every conversation. He'd be invisible, just like he wanted. "Yeah," he said, meeting her gaze. "I'll take it." Sarah snorted, barely hiding it. Kelly typed something into the system, then slid a clipboard across the desk. "Fill this out. You start tomorrow. Don't screw it up." Marcus took the clipboard, his fingers brushing the paper. He could have walked away right then, called David, demanded a meeting with the whole staff, but that wasn't the plan. He needed proof, raw, unfiltered proof, of what Apex had become. And he'd get it, 1 delivery at a time. As he scribbled a fake name, James Carter, on the form, he caught a glimpse of Emily Carter storming across the lobby, barking orders at a guy with a mop. The same Emily who'd smeared pizza sauce on him an hour ago. She didn't even glance his way. Good. Let her think he was nobody. Let them all think it. Because soon enough, they'd learn the truth, and it'd hit them like a freight train. The next morning, Marcus Evans pushed through the glass doors of Apex Innovations, a delivery vest slung over his hoodie and a stack of coffee orders in his hands. The lobby was alive with the hum of early risers, coders clutching energy drinks, managers in slim-fit blazers barking into earbuds, and interns darting between desks with nervous energy. Rain streaked the windows outside, but inside, the air was crisp, electric. Marcus kept his head low, blending into the chaos. Just another guy in a vest, hauling caffeine for the tech elite. His first stop was the 5th floor, home to the operations team. The elevator dinged, and he stepped out into a sea of glass cubicles and buzzing monitors. He'd barely taken 2 steps when a voice sliced through the noise. "Hey, coffee guy." Marcus turned. Standing by a cluster of desks was Ryan Mitchell, a senior ops manager in his early 40s. Ryan was stocky, with slicked back brown hair and a tan that screamed weekend golf trips. He wore a tight polo shirt, arms crossed, and a smirk tugging at his lips as he eyed Marcus up and down. "You the new delivery kid?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension. "Yeah," Marcus said, nodding once. "Got your order right here." He held up a tray of lattes, steam curling from the lids. Ryan stepped closer, his smirk growing. "Well, look at you jumping right in. What's your name, kid?" "James," Marcus replied, using the fake name he'd scribbled on the form yesterday. "James Carter." "James Carter," Ryan repeated, dragging out the words like they amused him. He glanced at the tray, then back at Marcus. "You know, James, you don't exactly look like you belong up here. This floor's for the big dogs, not the errand boys." He chuckled, loud enough to draw a few heads from nearby desks. A guy with glasses snickered, another typed faster as if pretending not to hear. Marcus kept his face neutral, setting the tray on Ryan's desk. "Just doing my job," he said, his voice even. "Your job," Ryan snorted, picking up a latte and inspecting it like it might be poisoned. "Yeah, well, don't mess it up. We don't need some rookie slowing us down." He took a sip, then wrinkled his nose. "This tastes like crap. You sure you didn't brew it yourself?" A ripple of laughter spread through the cubicles. Marcus stood there, hands in his pockets, letting it wash over him. He could have corrected Ryan. The coffee came straight from the shop downstairs. But he didn't. Not yet. Every word, every jab, was fuel. He'd come here to see how deep the rot went, and Ryan was digging the hole himself. Before Marcus could move on, Emily Carter appeared, her heels clicking across the polished floor. She'd swapped yesterday's blouse for a sharp blazer, but the scowl was the same. "Oh, great," she said, spotting Marcus. "It's the pizza genius. What's he doing up here?" Ryan grinned, leaning back in his chair. "Delivering coffee now. Guess he's moving up in the world." Emily rolled her eyes, snatching a cup from the tray. "Doubt it. He's got that lost puppy vibe. Probably can't even spell latte." She took a sip, then spat it back into the cup, glaring at Marcus. "This is cold. You're useless, you know that?" Marcus met her gaze, his dark eyes steady. "I'll get you a new one," he said, reaching for the cup. She yanked it back, splashing a little on his vest. "Don't bother. You'd probably screw that up too." She turned to Ryan, tossing the cup into a trash can. "Where'd they find this guy? The dumpster out back?" Ryan laughed, slapping his desk. "Probably. Looks like he rolled in off the street." The laughter spread. louder now. A woman with a ponytail smirked from her desk. A guy in a beanie shook his head like it was the funniest thing he'd seen all week. Marcus stood still, the tray in his hands, soaking it in. He could feel their eyes, their assumptions, their certainty that he was nothing. And he let them think it. "All right, coffee boy," Ryan said, waving a hand. "You're done here. Go fetch something else. Maybe stick to donuts next time. Less room to mess up." Marcus nodded, turning to leave, but Emily called after him. "Hey, wait a sec." He paused, looking back. She leaned forward, her voice low but sharp. "Don't get comfortable, okay? You're not cut out for this place. Stick to the grunt work, and stay out of our way." He held her stare for a beat, then gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Got it," he said, and walked off, the tray still in his grip. The elevator doors closed behind him, muffling their chuckles. Alone in the steel box, Marcus exhaled, his lips curling into that faint smile again. They had no clue who they were talking to, none at all. His next stop was the third floor, HR and support staff. The vibe was quieter here, less flashy, but the judgment was just as thick. As he dropped off a stack of mail, a guy in a button-down, Tom Bradley, mid-30s, wiry with a buzz cut, looked up from his desk. "You're the new guy?" Tom asked, eyeing Marcus's vest like it offended him. "Yeah," Marcus said, sliding the envelopes onto the desk. "James." Tom leaned back, crossing his arms. "Huh. Well, James, don't expect much around here. Delivery's the bottom of the barrel. You're basically invisible." He smirked, turning back to his screen. "Keep your head down, and you might last a week." Marcus didn't flinch. "Appreciate the advice," he said, his tone flat, and moved on. Invisible was exactly what he wanted, for now. Every floor, every interaction, was a test, and Apex was failing, hard. By noon, he'd covered half the building, hauling coffee, sandwiches, and packages. The pattern was clear: sneers from the managers, giggles from the staff, and not one person asking who he was beyond the vest. He'd expected resistance, but this was a culture built on looking down. And it wasn't just Emily or Ryan or Tom, it was everywhere. Back in the lobby, he paused by the coffee shop to grab a replacement order. The barista, a young black woman named Jade, handed him the cups with a quick smile. "Rough day?" she asked, glancing at the sauce stain on his vest. Marcus shrugged. "Something like that." She nodded like she got it. "Hang in there. They're not all bad." He took the cups, returning her smile. "Good to know." Jade was the first person who'd spoken to him like a human all day. He'd remember that. As he headed back to the elevator, Emily's voice echoed from across the lobby. "Hurry up, delivery boy! We're not paying you to stand around." More laughter followed, sharp and biting. Marcus kept walking, the cups warm in his hands. They thought they were in control, thought they could push him around. They were wrong, dead wrong. And soon, they'd find out just how much. Marcus Evans started his second day at Apex Innovations with a stack of breakfast orders and a fresh delivery vest, the sauce stain from Emily's tantrum scrubbed out overnight. The Seattle rain had eased into a gray drizzle, but inside the glass tower, the atmosphere was anything but calm. The office thrummed with the clack of keyboards, the hum of espresso machines, and the sharp voices of managers barking orders. Marcus moved through it all, a shadow in a bright orange vest, hauling trays of bagels and coffee up and down the elevators. To the staff, he was James Carter, the new delivery guy. To himself, he was a man on a mission, counting every slight, every sneer, every proof that his company had lost its soul. His first run took him back to the 5th floor, Ryan Mitchell's domain. The ops manager was leaning against a desk, chatting with a group of coders, when Marcus stepped off the elevator with a tray of lattes and pastries. Ryan spotted him instantly, his smirk flashing like a warning light. "Well, well, coffee boy's back," he called, loud enough for the whole floor to hear. "You didn't quit yet?" Marcus set the tray down on a table, his movements smooth, deliberate. "Not yet," he said, meeting Ryan's gaze for a split second before turning to leave. "Hold up," Ryan said, stepping forward. He grabbed a bagel from the tray, took a big bite, and chewed with exaggerated slowness. Crumb fell onto the floor, right where Marcus had just walked. Ryan swallowed, then grinned. "Oops, guess you missed a spot, James. Better clean that up." He kicked the crumbs with his shoe, smearing them across the tiles, and the coders around him chuckled. Marcus paused, hands in his pockets, then bent down with a napkin from the tray and wiped up the mess. The laughter grew louder, a few phones clicking as people snapped pics. He stood up, tossed the napkin in a trash can, and kept his face blank. Ryan thought he was winning, thought this was a game. Marcus let him think it. Every move was a brick in the wall he was building, evidence he'd use later. By mid-morning, he was on the 7th floor, dropping off a stack of mail for the marketing team. Emily Carter was there, pacing between desks, her voice cutting through the air like a whip. She'd traded her blazer for a crisp white shirt, but the attitude was unchanged. When she saw Marcus, her eyes narrowed. "You again," she said, stopping in front of him. "What's this?" She snatched an envelope from the pile, glanced at it, then flung it back at him. It hit his chest and fell to the floor. "Mail for your team," Marcus said, bending to pick it up. Emily crossed her arms, smirking. "Yeah, well, it's late. You're slower than a snail on crutches. Can't you do anything right?" She turned to a nearby coder, a guy with a man bun named Jake. "This is what we're stuck with now? Some delivery clown who can't even keep up?" Jake grinned, leaning back in his chair. "Maybe he's better at fetching than thinking." Marcus straightened up, handing the envelope back to Emily. "Anything else you need?" he asked, his tone flat. She snatched it from him, ripping it open. "Yeah, how about you stop dragging your feet? This isn't a charity. We don't pay you to stand around looking lost." She crumpled the envelope and tossed it at his feet. "Pick that up too, while you're at it." He did, silently, the crumpled paper joining the napkin in his pocket. Jake laughed, Emily smirked, and Marcus moved on. The pattern was set. Every floor, every delivery, someone found a way to push him down. On the 3rd floor, Tom Bradley from HR spilled a soda on the desk Marcus had just wiped, then grinned and said, "Oops, my bad. Guess you're mopping now." On the 9th, a project manager named Claire dumped a box of old files in his arms and told him to hustle them to storage, even though it wasn't his job. Everywhere he went, the message was the same. He was beneath them, a grunt, a nobody. Lunchtime brought the worst of it. Marcus was in the break room on the 4th floor, unloading a catering order, sandwiches, chips, cookies, when Ryan and Emily walked in together, trailed by a handful of staff. Ryan spotted the spread and clapped his hands. "Perfect timing, James. You're finally useful." He grabbed a sandwich, unwrapped it, and took a bite, then dropped the rest on the floor. "Tastes like garbage," he said, kicking it toward Marcus. "Clean that up, will ya?" Emily laughed, grabbing a cookie and crumbling it in her hands. The crumbs rained down onto the tiles. "Yeah, James, you're on cleanup duty. Don't just stand there. She brushed her hands off, letting more crumbs fall, and the group behind her snickered. Marcus knelt, picking up the sandwich and sweeping the crumbs into a pile with a napkin. His knees pressed against the cold floor, his vest riding up as he worked, the room filled with giggles, a few people pulling out phones to record. "Look at him go," Ryan said, crossing his arms. "Born for this, huh?" "Total natural," Emily added, her voice sharp. "Maybe we should get him a broom to match the vibe." Marcus stood, dumping the mess into a trash can, his face still unreadable. He could feel the weight of their stares, the heat of their amusement. Inside, his pulse ticked up, but he kept it locked down. Not yet. He wasn't here to snap back. He was here to watch, to learn, to build the case. And they were giving him everything he needed. The breaking point came late that afternoon. Marcus was back on the 5th floor, delivering a stack of water bottles for a meeting. Ryan was there, sprawled in a chair, barking at a coder about deadlines. Emily stood nearby, scrolling her phone. As Marcus set the bottles on a table, Emily looked up, her lips curling into that familiar sneer. "What's this?" she said, pointing at the table. "This is a mess. You call this delivery?" Marcus glanced at the table, bottles neatly lined up, labels facing out. "Looks fine to me," he said, keeping his voice low. "Fine?" Emily snapped, stepping closer. "You're blind or just stupid?" Without warning, she grabbed a bottle, unscrewed the cap, and dumped the water across the table. It splashed onto the floor, soaking Marcus's sneakers. She crossed her arms, staring him down. "That's what I think of your fine. Now clean it up." The room went still. Coders froze, mid-type, eyes darting between Emily and Marcus. Ryan let out a loud, barking laugh, slapping his knee. "Oh man, she got you good, James. Better hop to it." Marcus stood there, water dripping from his shoes, his vest clinging to his chest where it had splashed. He could hear the snickers, feel the phones pointed at him. Emily smirked, triumphant, and Ryan leaned forward, grinning like a kid at a circus. "What's the holdup, delivery boy?" Ryan said. "You waiting for a mop to fall from the sky?" Marcus bent down, grabbing a handful of napkins from the table, and started wiping up the water. His movements were slow, methodical, every swipe a silent tally. The laughter swelled, Ryan and Emily feeding off each other's energy, the staff joining in. He finished, stood up, and tossed the soaked napkins into the trash. "Good boy," Emily said, patting the air like he was a dog. "Now get lost. We've got real work to do." Marcus nodded, picking up his empty tray, and walked out. The elevator doors closed behind him, cutting off their laughter. Alone, he leaned against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment. His hands tightened around the tray, knuckles whitening. They thought they'd broken him, thought they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. Downstairs, Jade the barista caught him as he passed the coffee shop. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft, her eyes flicking to his wet shoes. "Yeah," Marcus said, forcing a small smile. "Just another day." She nodded, handing him a towel from behind the counter. "Keep your head up. You're tougher than they think." He took the towel, wiping his hands. "Thanks," he said, and meant it. Jade was a rare spark in this mess. A reminder that not everyone here was rotten. He'd remember her too. As he headed back to the delivery desk, Emily's voice rang out from across the lobby. "Move it, James. You're not paid to slack off." The laughter followed, a chorus of mockery. Marcus kept walking, the towel still in his grip. They'd pushed him to the edge, but he wouldn't break. Not yet. Tomorrow, they'd see who was really in charge. The third day at Apex Innovations dawned gray and heavy. the Seattle sky pressing low against the glass tower. Marcus Evans stepped into the lobby with his delivery vest on, sneakers still faintly damp from yesterday's water stunt, and a stack of mail tucked under his arm. He'd spent 2 days hauling coffee, wiping floors, and eating insults. 2 days of watching his company's true colors bleed out. Today, that ended. Today, he'd rip off the mask and show them who they'd been mocking. The office buzzed with its usual rhythm. Coders hunched over screens, managers pacing with earbuds, and interns scurrying with nervous energy. Marcus moved through it, invisible as always, dropping off packages and dodging the usual jabs. "Hurry up, James," someone muttered on the 3rd floor. "Don't trip over your own feet," another snickered on the 7th. He let it roll off him, his face a blank slate, his mind sharp and ready. The clock was ticking. At noon, the energy shifted. Whispers rippled through the floors, heads popping up from cubicles like meerkats. Marcus caught snatches of it as he delivered a stack of reports to the 9th floor. "David's coming in," a coder said, adjusting his glasses. "The big boss himself," another added, straightening her blouse. David Harper, the COO Marcus had left in charge, was making a rare visit. Perfect timing. Marcus finished his rounds and slipped into the break room on the 4th floor, grabbing a water bottle from the fridge. He leaned against the counter, sipping slowly, when Emily Carter stormed in, her heels clicking like gunfire. She was mid-rant, barking at a guy with a mop about a spill, when she spotted Marcus. "Oh, great," she said, rolling her eyes. "The delivery clown's taking a break. What, you think you deserve to sit around now?" He took another sip, meeting her gaze. "Just grabbing a drink," he said, his voice low, calm. "Yeah, well, grab it faster," she snapped, snatching a cookie from a tray he'd brought earlier and crumbling it onto the counter. "And clean that up while you're at it. You're not here to slack." She turned away, dismissing him, oblivious to the storm brewing behind her. Marcus wiped the crumbs with a napkin, his lips twitching into that faint smile. She had no idea how close she was to the edge. None of them did. By 2 p.m., the lobby was electric. Employees clustered near the elevators, voices buzzing with excitement. Marcus stood off to the side, a stack of empty trays in his hands, blending into the background. The double doors slid open, and David Harper stepped out. He was 40, lean and sharp in a charcoal suit, with short blonde hair and a smile that could charm investors. Behind him came 2 assistants, tablets in hand, and a security guy with a buzz cut. The room hushed, every eye on David. "Ladies and gentlemen," David said, his voice smooth and commanding, cutting through the silence. "Good to see you all." He paused, scanning the crowd with practiced ease. Emily straightened her shirt, flashing a grin. Ryan Mitchell pushed through from the back, puffing out his chest like a peacock. They thought this was their moment to shine. David clasped his hands together, smiling wider. "I've got big news today, something special for Apex." The crowd leaned in, breaths held. Ryan adjusted his collar, whispering to a coder, "Bet it's a bonus." Emily nodded, her eyes gleaming. "For years," David continued, "I've run this place with one goal, to keep the vision alive. But it's not my vision. It never was." He paused, letting the words sink in. A few people frowned, confused. Apex belongs to someone else, someone who built it from the ground up, and today, that someone is here. The whispers started, soft at first, then louder. "Who?" a coder muttered. "His son?" another guessed. Ryan's smirk faltered, his eyes darting around. Emily tilted her head, still clueless. Marcus stood still, trays in hand, watching it unfold. David turned, his smile softening. Marcus, come on up. Time stopped. Every head swiveled, searching. Ryan's jaw tightened, Emily's brow furrowed. Then they saw him, Marcus Evans, stepping forward from the edge of the crowd, still in his orange delivery vest, still holding those empty trays. The room went dead silent, a pin drop quiet that sucked the air out. He walked to David's side, calm and steady, and set the trays on a nearby table. What the hell? Ryan muttered, his voice barely a whisper. Emily's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide. The crowd parted, a sea of stunned faces as Marcus turned to face them. That's right, David said, clapping Marcus on the shoulder. This is Marcus Evans, your founder, your owner, and as of today, your CEO. The silence shattered. Gasps rippled through the room, followed by a wave of murmurs. The delivery guy? Someone choked out. No way, another stammered. Ryan's face drained of color, his hands clenching at his sides. Emily swayed, her knees wobbling like she might collapse. Marcus stood tall, his dark eyes sweeping the crowd, locking onto every person who'd laughed, who'd sneered, who'd pushed him down. I've been here, Marcus said, his voice deep, cutting through the chaos like a blade. 2 days, working with you, watching you. He paused, letting it sink in. I came in as James Carter, delivery guy, wanted to see what Apex really is when no one's looking. The murmurs grew frantic. He's been here the whole time? A coder whispered. Oh my God, another breathed. Ryan stared at the floor, his tan fading to a sickly pale. Emily's mouth opened, closed, opened again, no sound coming out. Marcus took a step forward, his gaze hard. And what I saw, it's not what I built, not even close. He turned to David, who nodded once, then back to the crowd. I saw people judged for how they look, what they do. I saw disrespect, arrogance, and I saw it from the bottom, where you thought I belonged. The room was a graveyard of silence now, every breath held tight. Ryan shifted, his hand shaking. Emily clutched her arms, her face red, her eyes darting for an exit. They knew what they'd done. Every crumb, every splash, every laugh, and they knew he'd seen it all. Marcus's eyes landed on Ryan, pinning him in place. You, he said, his voice low, deadly. You kicked food on the floor, told me to clean it, laughed like it was nothing. Ryan flinched, his mouth twitching but he couldn't speak. Then Marcus turned to Emily, slow and deliberate. And you, he said, softer but sharper. You threw water on a table I'd set up, called me useless, told me I didn't belong. Emily's gasp was audible, a strangled sound. She shook her head, a weak, desperate denial. He let the words hang, heavy and crushing. The crowd watched, frozen, some shifting uncomfortably, others staring in awe. Marcus straightened, his vest creaking faintly, and faced them all. If you'd known who I was, would you have done it? Silence. A long, brutal silence. Ryan's head dropped. Emily's eyes squeezed shut. They couldn't answer, because the truth was written on their faces. They wouldn't have. Not in a million years. Marcus nodded, almost to himself. That's the problem, he said. You only respect power when you see it. But power doesn't need a suit. It doesn't need a title. It just needs to be. He paused, his smile gone, his voice steel. And now, you're gonna feel it. The room held its breath, every eye on him. Ryan's knees buckled slightly. Emily's hands trembled. They'd mocked him, humiliated him, treated him like dirt. And now, standing there in that vest, Marcus Evans held their futures in his hands. The real show was about to start. The silence in the Apex Innovations lobby was thick, suffocating. Marcus Evans stood at the center, his orange delivery vest stark against the sleek glass and steel, his dark eyes burning through the crowd. Employees stared, mouths agape, as the truth settled like a weight on their chests. Ryan Mitchell and Emily Carter, the loudest voices in his humiliation, stood frozen, their faces pale, their confidence shattered. David Harper lingered beside Marcus, arms crossed, watching with quiet approval. The air crackled with tension, every second stretching into eternity. Marcus took a step forward, his sneakers squeaking faintly on the polished floor. "I've seen enough," he said, his voice steady, slicing through the stillness. 2 days. That's all it took to show me what you really are. He turned his head, locking eyes with Ryan. "You first." Ryan flinched, his hands jerking up like he could ward off the words. "Sir," he stammered, his voice high and shaky. "I didn't know. I swear. I was just—" "Just what?" Marcus cut in, his tone cold, unrelenting. "Just kicking food on the floor? Just laughing while I cleaned it? Just acting like you owned this place?" He paused, letting each question land like a punch. Ryan's mouth opened, but nothing came out. His eyes darted to the crowd, searching for support, finding none. Marcus didn't wait for an answer. "Ryan Mitchell," he said, his voice rising just enough to fill the room. "You're done. Your employment here ends now." A gasp rippled through the staff. Ryan's knees buckled, his face twisting in disbelief. "No," he choked out, stepping forward. "Please, sir, I need this job. I didn't mean—" "You meant every word," Marcus said, cutting him off again. "You meant every laugh. You meant to make me feel small because you thought I was nothing." He nodded to the security guy by David's side. "Get him out." The guard moved fast, grabbing Ryan's arm. "Let's go," he said, his voice flat. Ryan yanked back, his voice rising to a desperate whine. "No, wait, you can't do this." But the guard was stronger, pulling him toward the doors. The crowd parted, silent, as Ryan's pleas echoed off the glass. "I didn't know," he shouted one last time before the doors slid shut behind him, cutting him off. Marcus turned to Emily next, slow and deliberate. She shrank back, her hands clutching her shirt, her eyes wide with panic. "And you," he said, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. "You threw water on a table I set up. You called me useless. You told me I didn't belong." Emily shook her head, fast and frantic. "Sir, I was just doing my job," she blurted, her voice trembling. "Keeping standards high, you know? I didn't—" "Standards," Marcus said, raising an eyebrow. "Dumping water on a table is your standards? Smearing pizza on me is your standard?" He took a step closer and she stumbled back, nearly tripping. "You don't get to hide behind that excuse." Her face crumpled, tears welling up. "Please," she whispered, barely audible. "I didn't know who you were. I'd never—" "That's the point," Marcus said, his words sharp. "You didn't know, so you thought it was fine to treat me like trash. But it's not fine. Not here. Not anymore." He straightened, his gaze unwavering. "Emily Carter, you're fired. Effective immediately." She let out a strangled sob, her hands flying to her face. "No, please," she begged, her voice breaking. "I've been here for years. You've been here long enough to know better," Marcus said, his tone final. He nodded to the guard again, who stepped forward. Emily didn't fight, just crumpled as the guard took her arm, leading her out. Her sobs faded as the doors closed, leaving the room in stunned silence. Marcus turned back to the crowd, his chest rising with a slow breath. "Anyone else?" he asked, his voice ringing out. No one moved, no one breathed. The coders, the managers, the interns, they all stared wide-eyed, caught in the wreckage of their own actions. Then he softened, just a fraction. Not all of you were like that, he said, scanning the faces. Some of you saw me. Some of you spoke to me like a person. His eyes found Jade, the barista from the coffee shop, standing near the back. She'd given him a towel yesterday, a small kindness in a sea of cruelty. She looked up, surprised, as he pointed to her. Jade Wilson, he said, his voice warming. Step up here. Jade hesitated, then walked forward, her apron still tied around her waist. The crowd watched, confused, as she stopped beside him. Marcus smiled, the first real smile he'd shown all day. Jade didn't laugh, he said. She didn't judge. She treated me like I mattered, even when I was just the delivery guy. He turned to David. My first call as CEO. Jade's promoted. She's off the coffee counter and onto the ops team, effective tomorrow. A murmur of shock ran through the room. Jade's eyes widened, her hand flying to her chest. Me? She said, her voice small. Sir, I don't know what to say. You don't have to, Marcus said, nodding to her. You earned it. The crowd shifted, some clapping awkwardly, others staring in awe. Jade stepped back, her face flushed, a shy smile breaking through. Marcus let the moment settle, then faced the staff again, his expression hardening. This isn't about revenge, he said. It's about accountability. You don't get to tear people down and keep your place here. Not in my company. David stepped forward, his suit crisp against Marcus's vest. You heard him, he said, his voice firm. Marcus is back, and things are changing, starting now. He looked at Marcus, a flicker of pride in his eyes, then back to the crowd. Get back to work. We've got a lot to fix. The employees dispersed, heads low, whispers trailing behind them. Marcus stood there, watching them go, his vest still on, his hands in his pockets. Ryan and Emily were gone, their careers in ashes. Jade had a new start, a reward for decency. And Apex? Apex was his again. He caught David's eye, and the COO gave him a small nod. You good? David asked, low enough for just them to hear. Yeah, Marcus said, exhaling. I'm good. David clapped him on the shoulder. Welcome back, boss. Marcus nodded, his gaze drifting to the glass doors where Ryan and Emily had vanished. They'd thought he was nothing. They'd thought wrong. And now, the real work began. The lobby of Apex Innovations emptied out, the crowd of employees scattering back to their desks, their footsteps echoing off the glass walls. Marcus Evans stood alone at the center, his orange delivery vest still clinging to his shoulders, a quiet symbol of the chaos he'd just unraveled. The air felt lighter now, cleaner, like a storm had passed. David Harper lingered nearby, hands in his pockets, watching the last stragglers disappear into the elevators. Outside, the Seattle drizzle painted streaks on the windows, but inside, something new was taking root. Marcus turned to face the empty space, his chest rising with a deep breath. This is my company, he said, his voice low but firm, as if speaking to the walls themselves. And it's going to be what I built it to be. He stepped forward, his sneakers soft on the tiles, and looked up at the digital screen flashing the Apex logo. No more games, no more looking down on people. David walked over, stopping beside him. You sure shook things up, he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. They won't forget this. Good, Marcus replied, his eyes fixed on the screen. They shouldn't. He turned to David, his expression steady. Effective today, we're changing how this place runs. New rules. No tolerance for disrespect. No favoritism. Everyone gets a fair shot, no matter who they are or what they do. David nodded, pulling out his tablet. I'll get HR on it. Policies updated by end of week. Make it tomorrow, Marcus said, his tone leaving no room for debate. We don't wait on this. David chuckled, tapping at the screen. Yes, sir. You're back in the driver's seat. Marcus exhaled, his shoulders easing just a fraction. Always was, he said, his voice softening. Just had to remind them. He looked around the lobby, picturing the floors above. Coders, managers, interns, all scrambling to process what they'd seen. Ryan and Emily were gone, their desks empty by now. Jade was upstairs, probably still reeling from her promotion. The rest, they'd learn or they'd leave. This isn't about tearing people down, Marcus said, more to himself than David. It's about building something real, a place where you rise because you work, not because you fit some mold. He paused, his gaze drifting to the doors. Respect isn't a privilege. It's the baseline, and we start there. David slipped the tablet back into his pocket, meeting Marcus's eyes. You did good today, he said. Really good. Marcus gave a small nod, his lips curving into a faint smile. We're just getting started. He took one last look at the logo, then turned to David. Let's get to work. The lobby stood quiet, the rain tapping outside, as Marcus walked toward the elevators, vest and all. Apex was his again, truly his. And this time, it'd stand for something bigger.